It looks like it works. Okay, now I'm going to go quiet and cue intro music. And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parham.
We have an episode that is pretty much just going to be a packed interview, so we're not even going to drag out the introduction for the interview. We've got the Julius Caesar and Mark Anthony, not necessarily in that order, of Pathfinder Society, Paizo's organized play coordinator Tonya, and developer John. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Good to be back.
Now, I do expect one of you to murder the other by the end of the interview. Is that okay?
I prefer to do it in a way that leaves no evidence, but sure.
We'll turn the camera off, don't worry.
Oh, that's very generous of you.
We'll turn the camera off. It'll come back on. One of you will be dead. Murder mystery will begin.
Yes, yes.
No. This is all just nonsense. We're talking about Pathfinder Society. We're talking about serious stuff that's happening towards the end of Season 7. We're not really going to get into much Season 8 stuff, although we are inviting everyone to ask questions about what they think is going to, or ask questions about what they want to know is going to happen in Pathfinder Society in the near future.
No guarantee
and John,
they'll
Tonya,
answer.
if it's a question that they clearly have been avoiding all interview, don't expect another answer. But we're kind of leaning on you, audience. We're expecting you guys in our Twitter chat right now to provide us with a lot of really specific, really cool questions that might not have come to me in Param.
And speaking of which, just a reminder to any of you guys listening to this as a recording, we record these episodes live on Twitch at twitch.tv/no direction. And if you can catch us there at 8:30 Eastern every other Wednesday, we put the schedule up on our website where you can join in the live chat and ask questions to me, Ryan, or more importantly, our guests.
So let's start off then with when people can expect the big events that are going on with Pathfinder Society to be happening this year. You usually reserve a lot of the special events for the big conventions, and there's a lot of big conventions that are coming up, starting with PaizoCon shortly. So just speaking broadly first, what can we expect from the con season this year?
Broadly, lots of Pathfinder, lots of players, pushing both RPG, ACG, some new season stuff, but I will leave that for John.
But in terms of the actual table count, for example, we're going to still be presenting 35 different tables of Pathfinder, RPG, and ACG at PaizoCon 2016. People might also be tracking to see, hey, is PaizoCon repeating that thing where they did not have a middle slot of Pathfinder Society organized play like we did last year? And the answer is yes. However, we do have somebody who's going to be organizing a lot of the pickup games in between then, and that'll actually be happening through our PaizoCon event system.
So if you're interested, go ahead and email me. I'll pass them on. It's VL Louis Manco-Levitt who's taking it on. He's one of our local VLs here in Seattle, and he will get you on the schedule and get everything you need to know. We will have those games posted on some papers as well. Just kind of drop in, walk up. So even on that day, if you get to the middle slot and go, I feel like I got another game in me, we can put you up on the schedule. ACG will be running all day. Tanis is going hardcore. Starting in the morning, no breaks for her. We've pulled out the whip and we're both making her be the person, the go-to person. So
it's also worth remembering that PaizoCon is one of the two major conventions where we tend to announce upcoming products and upcoming developments. So PaizoCon will be the place where we plan on announcing the name of the new season, what the new season is about, as well as any new rules or campaign developments that are happening with the start of Season 8. So we'll announce a lot of that at the banquet on, I think that's a Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And then the plan is right now that on Sunday we will have a Pathfinder Society Q&A in which we will go into some more detail about all of that. So you can expect to hear more news at that time, late May.
Now, it's one of the things we often forget is it's always somebody's first time listening to us. So for anybody listening that doesn't know what Pathfinder Society is, and I imagine that's a small, tiny section of our audience, but could you give them like the 30-second explanation about exactly what Society is, why they should be excited about seasons?
Sure. Pathfinder Society Organized Play is a version of the Pathfinder RPG game, and unlike in what we oftentimes call a home game, where you have a group of friends and a GM who is running the game for you, and you never really switch up the roster, Organized Play allows you to take your character, level him or her up as you play small scenarios, and take that character anywhere in the world and play pickup games with any people worldwide. So it's really great for convention play, for play at game days in any public venue, but you can also play it in an Organized Play format at home as well, and still gain credit that you can take with you wherever you travel.
Now, there were some of the changes that were implemented last year at PaizoCon. You already mentioned one, that would be no middle slot. Are there any other changes that came at last year that you've learned from? What were the lessons you learned from last PaizoCon?
I wasn't there, so I can't really speak to this one.
It's true.
Yep. By and large, PaizoCon went really well. We've had a lot of good luck with relying on our volunteer leads, who are going to be returning to help out again this year. We've done a little bit of negotiation talking about where exactly to set up headquarters, whether we want to have multiple headquarters stations, because one of the things that we ran into was that because it's a very long hall that we have, or very long ballroom, shall we say, it's possible to walk in one end of it and be on the exact opposite end as HQ is. So we're thinking of ways to distribute that load a little bit to catch people as they come in, no matter where they are. But yeah, and then otherwise presenting fun new special events and adventures, and bringing as much good content as we can.
Last year at PaizoCon was the first PaizoCon, and it was actually like within 1 month of announcing the new core rules, like the split between core and not core. I forget what we call it.
Standard.
Yeah.
Standard. Okay. So obviously it was really early on in the core process at the time, but how do you expect that to go? How do you expect to split between core and standard this year?
We're actually not booking any specific game as a core game versus a standard game. What we're saying is if you have players, because you self-muster tables, that you know want to play core, GMs can be prepared for both. It's the same prep behind it. So just go in, let your GM know we would like this to be a core table, and then they will report it, run it as such.
Will that repeat itself for Gen Con too, then?
Yes. The mustering process with 180 tables at Gen Con was just too much to try and divide it, and too many people that weren't familiar with the two programs. So again, we're not selling tickets specific, but we will accommodate any table that wants to be core.
Okay. But Gen Con and PaizoCon are the two bigger cons that we cover, but those aren't the only cons you guys are doing this year, is it?
No, we've also got Origins in mid-June.
Okay.
In Columbus, Ohio.
In Columbus, Ohio, we will have a full spread out there. Our venture captain in the area, Mike McNerney, is taking point on it, but I will be there. Highly likely Tanis will be there as well. And they're moving us, though. The big thing is if you're used to coming and looking for us at the Franklin, we will not be in the Franklin. We will be in the Delaware rooms and on the mezzanine outside for all of our ACG tables.
Yeah, last year was my first Origins, and it was weird how I just could not, like, I was working a booth, so I only had a certain amount of time to go exploring. I could not find where the Pathfinder was. It just felt so separated from the rest of the convention.
It was, again, new convention, never been. So I've been told that we are around the corner in a different, same area, but the different set of rooms. The convention center's under remodeling for us this year, which is causing all the shakeup and move. But we should, because of the mezzanine tables, you should be able to at least find the ACG easier, which will right across the way is the RPG tables.
And how many tables are you expecting to run?
20 and about 6 of the ACG, so 20 RPG, I believe.
Okay. So smaller than PaizoCon, but still a very significant
Still
convention.
fairly significant, and Paizo does sponsor part of Origins. So.
It's also worth noting that the special event that we launch at PaizoCon is not going to be available for people to run at their own conventions until after Gen Con. It's going on something of a semi-exclusive circuit for that 3-month period, give or take. So we're going to debut it at PaizoCon, but we're also going to run it at Origins. Mm-hmm. And we'll also actually be running it at PaizoCon UK, which is another one of our focus.
We've offered it to them. They're still making their final tweaks to the schedule and putting slots in. So we should see those signups go live in a few days, I hope, from Dave Harrison and his team out there. They're cracks at putting this one together. But they were waiting on Eric and I because both of us are traveling to England, to Birmingham, for that one in July. So
I kind of now... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm kind of now imagining the special in its own, like, private tour bus and, like, a bunch of, PFS groupies hanging on and, like, wild parties with D20s getting tossed out of everywhere.
You're not wrong, actually. That's kind of how it goes.
I like this idea. I don't know. Will they put a bus in the budget?
I mean, so long as you don't specify dimensions, yeah.
Matchbox.
Then is the plan to bus to PaizoCon UK?
No, I wish. The channel's not that long. No, we'll be flying in for that one. I'm actually hoping to go a little bit early, meet some game stores over there, do a little tour of the island, say hi to some old friends. So
clearly you're missing
Go ahead, Pam.
Clearly you're missing an opportunity of having a Pathfinder Society cruise to UK.
There has been talk about gaming cruises. It's not dead yet, Jim. It is something that could be interesting, depending on the right venue, right circumstance, right group of people saying, yeah, let's do this.
That said, it has been done for other subsets of gaming. I believe Tennis O'Connor actually went on a gaming cruise about 4 months ago, maybe?
Yep.
Somewhere around there. But I think that was more focused on board games. But it sounded like she and everybody else involved had a blast.
Yeah, there were some stories coming out of that one that were not suitable for Twitch.
Good.
Was that the Dice Tower cruise?
I'm not sure.
I don't remember the name of it.
I'm going to research that.
Yeah, there was some story about Will Wheaton launching himself off of the table at the interview, and yeah. We'll have to get Tanis on here to give us the full rundown on that one.
Or to deny everything.
Yeah, there you go.
Fact 13 on the live Twitch chat is suggesting the TrainCon.
Yeah, there's actually been a not quite formal tradition, shall we say, about transportation conventions. Whether that's several people in in a car driving out over to Gen Con, running through one of the modules, or TrainCon has been something that's been proposed at various times in various levels of tongue-in-cheek. So, not out of the question.
Really, just an iPad and a Roll20, you've got a virtual tabletop anywhere you want, including in a moving car, as long as you've got the data for it.
There's no way on earth I can do all the Goblin voices and not throw up while riding in a car.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, the driver should not be the GM.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean, I just did a 17-hour road trip from Florida to Detroit. I could see some gaming on that one.
I just did a 17-hour road trip to Florida, but not to Detroit. So, yeah, I feel your pain on that one.
Yeah.
What is happening in Florida that everyone's driving to and from it?
Spring.
Disney. Vacation.
Yeah.
Break.
Now, we were just touching on PaizoCon UK, and Tonya, it's true, you lived in the UK for a couple of years, or more. So is that like your stomping ground? Is that really where you established yourself?
Yes, it was. I started out as a venture lieutenant with Rob Silk and Dave Harrison out there about, 3 years ago? Yeah. I'm just coming up on my 3rd year. What would have been my anniversary if I would have stayed in the Venture Corps.
So then this is a convention you have personal experience with and can talk about.
Yes, it is.
Okay, tell us about PaizoCon UK.
It's at Aston University in Birmingham. Friday night is normally a social gathering, so everyone goes out, gets some dinner. There's been magicians. They did a ghost walk one year. Trying to think back. Balti night before that, until they just outgrew every Balti restaurant in Birmingham and they couldn't find a place to seat everyone. It's relatively small and intimate. It's been capped, I believe, at 120, 150 people every year. So, you get to know everyone. There's 22 tables, 24 tables. People roam around, 3 rooms full of gaming. When I started, I think it was 2 rooms full of gaming, because I was in there at PaizoCon UK 2 when I started going. So we normally ran an interactive at night. It's where my daughter got her mini minion label as she helped me run around doing HQ stuff, and she's upset when I don't take her to other conventions because she thinks she needs to be the mini minion HQ rep. But yeah, it's a blast. This year they're introducing the ACG for the first time. We're going to have some demos and some tables of it. And then because Eric's going, there's been a request for him to visit Nex again, kind of one of his favorite grounds, and run something in the Spire. And I will be pulling a scenario out of retirement, still kind of deciding which one I want to look at to take over, but I'll be running a few tables of that as well.
Now, when you say it caps at 150, is this something that it tends to be the same 150 people every year, or is there actually competition to get those 150 spots?
Competition to get those spots. Ooh. You have about 90 returnees, and then there's room for new growth. I mean, because unfortunately, it's on the same weekend in the end of July, but you can't always get the time off. So there's always some movement there of people missing out or not missing out.
And does Eric usually attend PaizoCon UK?
No, he has not been in the UK since the last Gen Con was done over there. So this is him going back and saying hi for a while.
Now, does that represent growth then for this convention?
It represents kind of where we hold it in the Paizo family of conventions. We've got a lot of potential over there, but because of where it's located, we get a lot of people in from the continent as well. Germany, France. Our Swiss contingent's there every year, normally 2 or 3 plus a whole bunch of newbies. We've got some Spanish people that come up from Spain and play. So it's a good chance to get to know a lot of people from one show. And I think he thought that was well worth coming over and seeing why I keep raving about it and why I say it's one of my favorite ones to go to.
Well, it's definitely a convention that we hear about pretty consistently, and you've lent the Paizo name. It's not just a Pathfinder convention. So it
right.
holds a certain standard among Pathfinder conventions.
Yeah, we've only lent the name twice, PaizoCon Oz and PaizoCon UK. So
I'm less familiar with PaizoCon Oz.
Same idea. It rotates through Australia and New Zealand in September, October of every year. So it is the next PaizoCon on my list of things to get to. I don't know if I'll get to do it this fall or if it'll have to wait until 2017.
All right, but speaking of the next PaizoCon, let's talk about PaizoCon US, PaizoCon OG, whatever you want to call it.
Paizo Prime?
Paizo Prime, sure. John, you haven't talked in a while, so why don't you tell us about some of the exciting adventures and some of the events that are going to be at PaizoCon people can look forward to?
Sure, we have a couple of really fun things coming down the pipeline when it comes to content. In terms of PaizoCon itself, we'll be launching 2 new adventures, 7-22, 7-23. Those are a Tier 1-5 and a Tier 7-11 respectively. The 1-5 is Bid for Albastrine, written by Thurston Hillman, in which, in effect, the players are trying to stop the Aspis Consortium from buying an entire city. This is, for those who went to PaizoCon last year, they may remember a small table of us running Serpent's Rise that I was running for a bunch of hooligans who couldn't think straight or pay attention to the plot line, but decided that they were going to represent Druma Lodge. And it got us to thinking that, wow, Druma Lodge, there is nothing that we've done in Druma. We should change that. And so the premise is that Druma built a city at some point expecting a lot of growth. It never happened. So recently they decided they were going to start auctioning off the city in sections to the highest bidders, because Druma. And the Aspis Consortium, or namely one of our villains in the Aspis Consortium, has decided that she's going to basically buy out the entire thing, giving the Aspis Consortium total legal control of an unassailable bastion of wealth and greed in the heartlands of Avestan itself. So the Society is notably interested in stopping that. I'm really excited about this one because this has been a chance for Thirsty and me to work together, primarily Thirsty, admittedly, but to work together in making a very social scenario, which I like to do at least once per year, because having one of these role-play heavy adventures can be a really nice break from kicking in a door and stabbing things. So what we have seen already just proves how awesome a grasp of Drumish flavor Thirsty has, and how amazing just some of the guilt that covers all of Druma actually is. So I'm expecting a lot of fun from that one. 723 actually addresses one of the big plot lines that started last PaizoCon, when we had an Aspis assault on the Grand Lodge that resulted in the death of one of our major NPCs. 723, written by our Paizo's own editor, Jason Keeley, actually involves going and rescuing that individual. We have found where he is, and it's time to recover him before he's actually permanently disappeared into another world. So it'll be interesting to see the reporting data to see if we actually did rescue this person, if people cared to rescue this person, and what the replacement might be otherwise. So again, a lot of excitement out of that. That one also is going to a place that we have barely been to in a long time, and I think people will be really excited to see. And then finally, we have a new special that will be debuting. That would be, Friday night at PaizoCon? So, again, last year we had the adventure Serpent's Rise, where the players portrayed Aspis Consortium agents sent out as the Alpha Strike Team to take down the Grand Lodge from the inside out, and basically take down important targets, steal important things, and ruin our day, setting a lot of the foundation for what happened in Season 7. Adventure 798 is called Serpent's Ire. Serpent's Ire returns to some of those same Aspis Consortium pre-generated characters. 3 of them will be returning. We will also see 3 new faces. For those who have been following along with the Season 7 plotline, there's an organization called the Korholm Agenda that we have been running into, which is effectively a rogue faction within the Aspis Consortium. And the Aspis Consortium, as it looks at the Korholm Agenda more and more, has basically decided, this group is not representing us well. They do not speak for us. Shut this down. And that's unfortunate, because these pre-generated characters were working for the Korholm Agenda before, which means that several of the returning members are returning with big red marks on their wrists where they have been slapped with a ruler several times and told, you can either do this mission to get back in our good graces, or you can basically vanish from canon forever. And they have made the logical choice. But this one is going to be a lot of fun, because the Aspis agents this time are going to be taking orders directly from one of the legendary patrons who run the Aspis Consortium, and they're going to be breaking into a rebellious Aspis facility to infiltrate that and take it down and make off with as much of the goodies inside as they can. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun, and I will be writing that one. So that should be good fun for everybody.
Now, you said that 3 of the Aspis agents are coming back, 3 of them aren't. But there was a 7th agent. There was a 7th pre-generated character in Serpent's Rise. Are we going to see this character show up again?
There are some loose plans for making that character show up again, because there's some loose headcanon that some of us have regarding what happened to him and where he went and what he is up to now. I would really love to have him come back, honestly, because he was a blast, and seeing people's eyes at the table when you reveal who this 7th pre-generated character is has always been a blast.
Which we're keeping Serpent's Rise still a secret. Like, this is still a scenario that people can actively play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, when it comes to Gen Con, where we will be running Serpent's Ire, that's 798, the preceding night we will have several tables set aside, and by several I mean like several
20,
score.
Yeah, I think it's 20 or 30 tables.
Running Serpent's Rise. That way people who are going to play Serpent's Ire the next night, who have not experienced the precursor, can do that then.
Yep. Actually, it's
Okay.
Thursday afternoon and Thursday evening.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a double header if you want to, if you haven't played one, so that you can just go into the other.
And was it PaizoCon exclusive last year, or did people get to play it at Gen Con last year as well?
It was at Gen Con.
People played at Gen Con as well. We had a huge number of specials last year at Gen Con. So actually, Serpent's Rise ended up being a Sunday morning special, which drew out some more people into the Sunday slot, but running high-level pre-generated characters on a Sunday morning of a 4-day convention has predictable results. So we have taken that into account when it comes to planning out what is being run when at Gen Con.
I think the tiredness probably helped people play bad guys. Just everyone was probably cranky and not cooperative.
I think it was probably a mixed blessing.
There's probably a lot of hissing at the table.
Does this mean you guys are going to be cutting back on the number of specials at Gen Con? Because it did seem like a really packed schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are cutting by one. We're going with 3 specials, plus the return of Serpent's Rise, the return of True Dragons. But there will be 1 interactive and 2 pre-generated. Kind of keeping the rest of that under wraps for now.
What do you mean interactive as opposed to
By
pre-generated?
interactive, this would be one of the adventures where all of the tables are playing together and able to affect each other's outcome.
Oh, with the big screen and all the noise and the theatrics and the awesomeness.
Yeah, the awesomeness, exactly.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
But
We all...
one of the things from both the players and the GMs last year, feedback-wise, is that Gen Con had just a little bit too much special going on, and so by the end of it, they were specialed out.
Yeah.
So we're stepping that back a little bit, which is also a blessing for us development-wise. But we'll see how what the feedback is this time around, and we'll see if we need to readjust again.
Yeah. So but one of the things we are doing is Sunday morning we're bringing back Serpent's Ire. We're bringing back the other pre-generated special. So if you don't get tickets to the premiere night, you'll get a chance to play it Sunday.
So fewer unique specials, but more opportunities to play the specials.
Yeah, because normally our history shows that we sell them out, and there's still a large contingent that would love to play them.
And that's especially relevant when it comes to something like a Thursday night special, because not everybody gets to Gen Con in time to get to a Thursday night special.
I know that
Now, I know in the past... Go ahead, Pam.
I know that the main special, I hate to say the main special, but the one with all the theatrics, I know that when I was registering for events, I made sure to grab it right quick, and that sucker sold out in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So guys, if you intend on going to any of these specials at any of these conventions, register early.
Broken down by tiers.
Yep, exactly. I was going to say, one of the other feedbacks we had was getting our GMs at the right level and having the right seats for the right people. So this year, Gen Con and we discussed it, and we are selling it by tiers. So you can buy a ticket for a 1-2, a 3-4, a 5-6, a 7-8, or a 10-11. And I will be watching those tickets very closely to make sure we slide them where they need to go to get as many people in as possible. But that does mean... do kind of watch your characters. Try not to kill the one that you sign up for it for. We will accommodate all real tickets. That is Gen Con policy and Paizo policy, but you make my job easier when the character's still alive to play and in the right level.
And it makes it a lot easier for our GMs as well, because they can prepare a single sub-tier, maybe one additional one just to be flexible, but they can prepare as well as possible for the one that they expect to have. And that way, the experience is going to be better for everybody.
Yep.
I've GM'd...
We have a question from chat from KSB666. He's asking if will Serpent's Rise be reserved for 4 or 5-star GMs?
Serpent's Ire, yeah.
Serpent's Ire, I'm sorry.
Ire is going to be another one of the multi-star specials. In all likelihood, although I wouldn't say that this is quite final, but in all likelihood, Serpent's Ire is going to be a 4-star special. And the other pre-generated special that we have debuting at Gen Con, which we'll talk about more at PaizoCon itself, will probably be a 5-star.
Now, I've GM'd...
in the past... Go ahead, Pam.
Now, I've GM'd some of these specials for you guys at the cons, and before, when you had to prep all the tiers. And I have to say that was probably the most intimidating GM prep I've ever had to do for you guys.
Yeah, and unfortunately last year we had a run on the very lowest tables and the very highest tables, and that meant all those people that had prepped that 3 to 6 range were being asked to scramble. And and it really, we're committed to giving the best experience we can. So the tighter we can make that, the better we can deliver. So one thing that I noticed come through the chat a while ago was, are there still spots for volunteers? I've had a few cancellations, and this week I am looking back at where my volunteers are located. I've got a few outstanding emails and a wait list that I need to answer. And then if you haven't applied and you want to, it's GenConPFSvolunteers at Paizo.com. And just drop me a line and I will send you the link to fill out the questionnaire, and we'll go from there.
And what about your PaizoCon volunteers?
PaizoCon's full and has a wait list quite a ways, so I would say now you're kind of out of luck. But especially anyone that's willing to take a Gen Con Tier 3 or lower, Tier 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I've got room in there. It's the 1s and 2s that are mostly full up for me.
And then as usual, as usual, we'll also be debuting 3 new scenarios at Gen Con, and another program that we can talk about a little bit later in more detail.
Okay. A little bit later this interview?
Sure. I think we did secret content because everyone's like jonesing for this one.
Yeah.
Watching the Twitch stream, or the Twitch chat, and people are like, secret content.
Okay. Can you move your microphone further back? As you get excited, you're blowing the mic.
Oh. Just avoid getting super excited.
Yeah. We like you being excited. It's great.
We figured out the Mark Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so secret content. What's going on there?
Okay, so we have not done super high level content, which is to say level 12 and higher, in Pathfinder Society in any but the most nominal sense. We've had a couple of interactive specials where we've had like tier 12 to 15 or so sub-tiers, but trying to run that stuff at an interactive special is onerous in my experience and from what I've seen at the tables, because combats can take hours. So we've also sanctioned new content like modules and Adventure Pass, but even then that is not truly Pathfinder Society content. And the last time we did that was at the end of Season 2 with the close of the much-acclaimed Eyes of the Ten series. So ever since I've been at Paizo, there's been a lot of talk of, well, are we ready to do one of these yet? No, not quite yet. And finally, we're able to push forward and say, no, we're going to do another arc. We're going to explore the secret level content, and we're going to give our most dedicated players some way to play their characters beyond level 11. So about 3 weeks ago at this point, in a Paizo.com blog, we talked about how we were returning to secret content, and we revealed the name of the series, the first adventure, as well as the author. So the series itself is called All for Immortality, and it'll travel between a couple of different regions, some of which none of which we've really been to a lot, although we're visiting several of them a lot more during Season 7 to cover up that discrepancy. And the first one that we announced is called First Taste of Eternity by Thurston Hillman. These are all Tier 12 to 15, which means that they're broken into sub-tier 12, 13, and 14, 15. We kept it to a slightly tighter sub-tier range. And it starts out in Thuvia. And the description that we have up on the product page talks a bit about how it is dealing with the Sun Orchid Elixir trade, and how there's one of the city-states, Pashao, that has tried to teleport its Sun Orchid Elixir several times over, and it has failed the last couple times. So basically, the shipment that represents almost all of its GDP has not happened for a decade running. And so they're desperate to make sure it goes off without a hitch this time. And they need the best people that money can buy, and in that case, it happens to be that the Pathfinder Society is for sale. So the PCs are going to start off calling them guards for the Sun Orchid trade is not giving it credit, because when it comes to shipping something that is worth millions of gold pieces, people spare no expense, and they go to some weird lengths to try and make it right. So basically the PCs are in there to be the team that makes sure that the teams that are already on the ground succeed. And if something goes wrong, and something will go wrong, they're there to step in. Surprise! Oh, geez, I got excited again. But yeah, so that one's being written by Thurston Hillman. And he's already sent in the adventure, looking through it. Well, really in the writing process, we have already cackled quite a bit together as as some of the encounters, really all of the encounters are fantastic and will be both a challenge to characters' abilities, but also the players' thinking skills and their ability to come up with fun tactics and adapt on the fly to the crazy stuff that can happen at higher levels. But that's kind of hitting what we already half knew. So we also have 2 more parts in this series. And I'm happy to talk about their titles as well as who's writing them. Part 2 is called All the Gods Beyond. All the Gods Beyond is one of the first adventures that we've done in a while that's being co-authored. It is being written both by Amanda Hammond-Coons, who is one of our developers at Paizo, as well as the esteemed F. Wesley Schneider, who is stepping in for his first Pathfinder Society content ever. He's one of the few people downstairs who we can bug and be like, you haven't written a scenario yet. But this one has strong horror undertones and touches on some things that you love dearly, so this is your chance. And the preliminary work on that so far has been absolutely amazing. Working with both Wes and Amanda is great because they are full of great ideas that take an already really fun outline and just put their own spin on it. But basically, stuff that the PCs are going to be finding out over the course of Part 1 are going to point them out toward Part 2, which goes into a part of the Aspis Consortium that we have never explored before. And we're going to be doing a lot of revealing of secrets, including some of the history of who's been behind all of the Sun Orchid stuff, as well as their motivations and how we can get back at them. Talking about this is a little difficult without giving away all the plot lines, so I'm being a little bit vague. But Wes and Amanda are going to be writing All the Gods Beyond, Part 2. And then the final part of All for Immortality is called Serpent's Fall. So we have Serpent's Rise, where the Aspis Consortium sure is doing some great stuff and are succeeding wonderfully. We have Serpent's Ire coming out of PaizoCon, where the Aspis Consortium is getting really irked at an organization that they want to see taken out. And then Serpent's Fall goes back to the Pathfinder Society player characters, who are, again, level 12 plus, who are going to go into the heart of the Aspis Consortium itself, namely the Aspis Consortium building in Ostenso, where they're going to stab at its heart, taking out some of its most important people as they seek, shall we say, justice for all of the wrongs that have been done to us over the course of Season 7. We'll be unveiling the mastermind and all of that, and so that one, again, will be taking place in Cheliax. And I will be writing that one. So I'm handling both Serpent's Ire as well as Serpent's Fall. So each one of these is expected to give 1 experience point. So that means if you play through the entire 3-part arc, you should be gaining a level. It is great if you can play them with the same character. It's a little early to promise that there is, in fact, or confirm that there is a boon that rewards you for playing all 3 on the same character, but I very strongly expect that there will be some sort of reward for playing all 3 on the same character. And what's more, also, these are designed to occupy a single slot of playtime, as opposed to Requiem from the Red Raven by Eric Mona, which took up 2, and in practice really more like 3 game slots. But all that comes with the caveat of this is our first super high level content in a while. Super high content tends to take a long time to play through, especially if people are not prepared. So I recommend that groups be really familiar with how their characters work, know how to speed up their combat turns, and be understanding if it runs over.
So,
Go
sorry.
ahead,
No, go ahead.
Convention circuit, we are offering these at Gen Con. All 3
Really?
in the morning as kind of, they're not specials, they'll be exclusive events. We're slotting some of our most experienced GMs to them to help them run into that time. and to offer a nifty experience there as well. But so if you have a group that's spread throughout the country or the world and you want them to get together and play through this arc, they will be on offer.
We're also staggering when we offer them slightly, so that way when we provide part 1, the next morning we will also provide a couple more tables of part 1 in addition to part 2. That way if you missed out on the first day, you can still pick it up partway through.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions about these scenarios, and before I get to them, I just want to ask, how open can we be? Like, if we have very specific questions, are you okay with that, and you'll just dismiss anything that's a complete spoiler?
Sure.
All right. So my first thought, Aspis Consortium is heavily involved with these, which makes sense. It's one of the most consistent villains in Pathfinder Society, but it's also this season's major villain. So is this something that's going to be tied directly into this season's plot?
Yes, it does tie into the season's plot. However, you could play it on its own, and because of how the Aspis Consortium is generally applied in the course of the organized play campaign, you could kind of spin this storyline in any season, and it would still have relevance. It's going to have the most relevance when taken along with some of the other Season 7 meta plot, but yeah, you could run this as a let's kill the Aspis Seeker arc, and it would do just fine. I know that was one of the issues with the Year of the Shadow Lodge Eyes of the Ten Seeker arc, was that it was very tied into certain NPCs who just suddenly disappeared, or certain developments that then became factions and things like that, where it suddenly seemed very anachronistic and incongruous to play through it later on, unless you did honestly what a lot of players do with Society, which is, yeah, today we're playing a Season 3 thing. This happened back in Season 3. So, use your imagination.
So are
I
all...
just assumed all Pathfinders are time travelers, with the main directive being they cannot mess with continuity.
That's also legit, yeah.
Yep. Blue boxes somewhere.
All right, looking specifically at all the gods beyond. Usually the word beyond in Pathfinder products and titles is reserved for space-related things. Is that consistent here?
I think that there's definitely some room for us to explore space-related things. In a somewhat low spoiler comparison, Eyes of the Ten did some space-related things as well. And certainly we have a lot of enthusiasts in the office when it comes to space-related things. Certainly if we had like Crystal Fraser writing this one and it were called All the Gods Beyond, you could bet that it was space-related. In this case, I think that there might be some elements that those who like space will enjoy, and we'll kind of go from there.
Oh,
now you mentioned
man.
that one of the ways you enticed Wes onto the adventure is that it's a horror adventure, which I didn't get that from your brief description of it. So in what ways does it have horror elements?
It involves going into a facility that is both unconventional as well as afflicted, shall we say. Things are not going well for the place that we're traveling, and the PCs are going to have to deal with a lot of that fallout. And a lot of that fallout has a lot of potential for GMs who are good at building atmosphere, and who enjoy inflicting, lesser psychological trauma upon their players in like the, oh yeah, this is creepy sort of way. So.
All right. Now, there have been parallels drawn between the Aspis Consortium and a certain ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world from an 80s cartoon.
Is this a theory promoted by somebody other than you?
Come on, I cannot be the only one.
Fascination.
I'm just saying, this really sounds like it's going to be the Cobra Law adventure, and we're going to meet Globulus and Nemesis Enforcer. Is this just G.I. Joe, the 1986 animated movie, as an adventure?
I
lie to me, John.
Say not on purpose, but I think that you, Ryan, in running this, could totally spin this in a G.I. Joe way, including to the point of, all right, we're on to the next scene, and then you play a 1-minute clip from one of your favorite scenes, and then you go back, it's like, okay, that gets us into the mood, but this time our guns are going to actually hit people, and if we blow up a vehicle, we won't watch all the people dive out first to make sure that this has a G rating.
You're assuming a lot that Brian's players will actually make hit rolls.
Well, yeah, that is true. But one of the other fun things that we can do with this adventure in particular, part 2, is that as we explore some of these horror themes in a horrific location, it's definitely a chance to be embracing some of the new material in the upcoming Horror Adventures book in the RPG line, which will be coming out at Gen Con. And then it's also worth plugging that, hey, we totally have Strange Aeons, which is tying into a lot of horror elements and sort of Cthulhu-esque related things, which will be debuting at Gen Con as well. And in Pathfinder Society, when figuring out what sorts of scenarios we want to do, we like to have small tie-ins to the ongoing adventure paths, and you're probably going to see at least a couple of different opportunities to use horror themes or adventure ideas in some of our upcoming adventures, but not all.
And so I know you didn't want to talk about season 8, but so anyone that's been speculating it would be the horror season, probably not.
Well, that remains to be announced at PaizoCon. But I can say that we are really excited about a lot of the adventure and story potential, because we're going to be delving into some things that we have not touched in a long time or touched at all. So there's some wonderful fertile ground for us to explore in Season 8.
I had a question about, you mentioned that the super high-level slots, the new arc, you planned them to be one-slot adventures. How are you designing something that operates at that level where a combat can last 2 hours to fit in a 4-hour slot?
One of the things that there's a document that I send out to all of the authors that basically says, for a certain tier adventure, please aim for this many major encounters or minor encounters, where major is like, yeah, we totally are fighting something challenging, and minor is, here's a thing that you can kick over, or here's some people to talk to, or stuff like that. So those are good guidelines for establishing how long certain encounters are expected to take and how many we should have in there. I basically had to rejigger how the entire system worked for the Seeker arc, and so we've basically backed up, the number of encounters that would take place in one of these. So the aim is to provide enough encounters to be a full adventure, but not so many that it should run over in an egregious way.
I do want to talk about Boons, but you already alluded to not having anything concrete to say about it. But let me just ask then, a past 3-part scenario, there was a significant reward at the end of the second scenario for the third scenario. And since this is a Seeker arc and people are not likely get to use the boons they get in the third part, are we to expect the second part will be the money boon?
Are we to expect which one will be the money boon?
That part 2 will have the money boon that will pay off in part 3. Because whatever you get in part 3, you're not likely to get much use out of because of the high level.
Well, it all depends on the approach that we take for such a boon, because we've toyed around with a couple of boons over the history of Pathfinder Society that say, hey, this boon that we're giving you, it's not about you. It's about another one of your characters. And so that is certainly one of the approaches that we can take is, here's a boon that you can apply to a different character that you will have more of a chance to play further. That's one way. Another way we might take it is, here's a boon that applies to the character who played this. And if we do that, what it might force us to do, regrettably, is do more Seeker-level content, and that would just hurt us so much.
Or, potentially, you could place Seekers in any tier.
That would be the most depressing Tier 1-5 table, but
so low.
That would still be a really disappointing table.
Samsons, all of them, their lives in between.
I might be reading into your tone, but are you saying that's a bad idea?
No, I'd say that there are a lot of opportunities and directions that we can explore this.
I would love to take some questions from chat. I've been trying to keep up with it. Chat has been chatty, but I haven't seen a lot of specific questions. Param, have I missed any?
Not too many, no. They're guessing that lots of speculation about what season 8 is, but but not, I mean that doesn't help.
Right. I've seen a couple of questions.
To the banquet.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've seen a lot of questions that I want to ask before the end of the interview, but I'm looking specifically for questions that tying into the Seeker arc. 4-player adjustment from Seeker arc asks, why Rope 2?
Europe.
Oh, Europe. Oh, of course.
The plan is, yes, to have a 4-person adjustment. There's also a little bit of fun that we might be able to have revisiting an old mechanic that we haven't done in quite a while. Once again, this is in part thirsty, toying around with my development time and my sanity, but we are also poking at the possibility of maybe doing a hard mode for this. So if somebody is so inclined and really thinks that Thirsty's standard writing is not abusive enough, then we might be able to give you something just a little bit more.
Oh, somebody did say hard mode. I don't know if that was in response or if it was just a coincidence. I just got a whole bunch of questions. I haven't had a chance to filter through them yet. So, can the same PC play the Seeker arc that played Eyes of the Ten?
Yeah.
Can we get Alex Agunas, and this is not our question, this is from Foxworthy. Can we get Alex Agunas to write a Kitsune scenario that opens up catfolk as a boon?
Are you sure that wasn't Alex?
That sounds like a scenario non sequitur, because if there were to be a catfolk boon race opening scenario, I would really want it to tie into the catfolk themselves.
Yeah.
We've gotten a little bit of information about the catfolk in Inner Sea races, as well as how they tie into Galarian and where they're found, which is a great start to understanding them as one of the zero hit die races. I would really enjoy... What I tend to like to do is have scenarios where we can introduce an area where one of these different player races is predominant, or at least is a really strong minority, so that way players can see them in action before they actually make their own. That way they have a sense of how these particular species are intended, in serious air quotes, to be presented. Of course, people can present them in whatever way they want, but it's always nice to show what the canonical assumption is. So yeah, I think a catfolk scenario, if we wanted to open up catfolk as a race boon, could be a lot of fun.
But no, you can't kill all Kitsune. Just Dire 5. No extermination.
Dire 5 had another question that I'll edit a little bit. He said, what should we do if we like the new NPC that replaced the old NPC that something happened to in Serpent's Rise? What if we like the new NPC more than the old NPC?
If we like the new... okay, so let's say that we had NPCs A through F in Serpent's Rise, and A, B, and C are returning for Serpent's Ire. Is the question... let's see. I see. Never mind. This is about certain people who kick the bucket. Yeah, actually, I've been working with Jason Keeley, who's writing 723, which is where we perform a bit of a rescue mission, to see if maybe we can do a little bit of you win if you do and you win if you don't possibility, to help us decide exactly who is going to fill that title from here on.
Do you want to announce the next GM race? That was one of the other questions.
And suppose that somebody's playing a scenario before we decide the fate of that NPC, or actually after the fate's decided and things did not turn out well for that NPC. How should people substitute that NPC from the existing scenarios?
It's just going to be something that is based on whatever their experience is. So if the GM has seen nothing but, death and doom for that NPC, then...
Things did not turn out well for that NPC. How should people substitute that NPC from the existing scenarios?
It's just going to be something that is based on whatever their experience is. So if the GM has seen nothing but, death and doom for that NPC, then we will be taking some of those reporting notes into account for presenting future adventures, and we'll be spinning up how we do, shall we say, mission briefings, for example, based on some of that data. So we'll try to hit it on an overarching level, but GMs have been presenting their own spin on different venture captains and the masters and whatnot since day one, and I don't expect that to necessarily change.
Wait, we could do that? I thought we had to do canonical, this is how you play this NPC. and this adventure.
You keep on sending in Creighton Shane being like drunk and passed out on a floor and mumbling his mission statement. That probably isn't giving the most honest version of the elf. But probably I won't hear about it. And as long as you are not, grossly misrepresenting the scenario, most of the scenarios say read or paraphrase the following. And we try to give GMs flexibility in certain areas so that they can really make the scenario their own.
Yeah. But however, if you start having General Dring deliver all of his briefings at 9 o'clock in the morning, there might be an issue.
What does paraphrase mean, really?
Do you need an answer to that?
No, I guess I don't. But Yasmudo is asking, are you planning to playtest the Secret Arc Adventures?
I have some people in the area who could serve as a good playtest group.
And no kind of open playtest?
Well, that would kind of spoil it.
Yeah, we're not planning on doing an open playtest.
No.
Not even a limited open playtest. I'm just asking for Yasmudo's sake.
When we do playtest for scenarios, we do it in a closed group, typically all live and local and around the same table. So that's how it goes. Also, scenario authors are expected to run their own playtests of things before turning them over, ideally. And from there, we apply our best practices as developers to ensure that things are going to be as good as possible based on our experience.
We've got a couple of less related to the Secret Arc questions, just because I don't want those to get lost. And if more Secret Arc questions come in, and I encourage anyone that has them to start asking them, we'll get back to them. But for now, this is something that Claude Kenilal, he asked on the Paizo.com message board, is there anything you can tell us about the progress of pre-gens for Iconics that don't have PFS legal pre-gens?
Sure. The 8 remaining pre-generated characters, those would be the 6 Advanced Player's Guide pre-generated characters, the Ultimate Magic Magus, as well as the recently released Ultimate Intrigue Vigilante, are yet to receive their pre-generated characters. One of the things that we've been doing in leading up to convention season, which has so far been working out really well, has been a reorganization of how we assign our priorities as well as track all of our ongoing projects to make sure that nothing slips through the gaps. In part, this is to ensure that when it comes to giving scenarios to convention GMs at PaizoCon and Gen Con in particular, we can get those out to them as early as possible so that they have extra time to prepare. And by extra time, I mean the appropriate amount of time to prepare, so that we can minimize those sorts of calamities that we have occasionally run into. So among those different projects, though, we have made a big, bold signal for doing the remaining pre-generated characters. So I cannot necessarily give a definitive timeline for what that's going to be. They might show up earlier than what we have as sort of our internal drop dead, but they are ongoing projects that we continue to revisit and continue to address. So we will see them in the future.
And that includes novels that haven't been sanctioned, APs that were on our list of things to do. We've got quite a big list of to-do that we keep looking at and trying to schedule in around scenario drops and other things we have to get done. So if you haven't seen it yet, give us some time. Definitely on our radar.
John, you mentioned calamities that have come up because of lack of organization. Do you have a favorite?
Well, it's more just, especially when in past years I was the only one really putting together scenarios, our timeline tended to be very tight, and if there were any hiccups along the way, then it could mean, either from a technical or from just a developmental standpoint, it could mean that GMs were getting scenarios later than we were hoping they would for preparation purposes. So we've certainly heard feedback from our GMs that they need more time to prepare, and that's been feedback that we've taken very seriously and taken steps to ensure that we can address.
I remember getting a scenario the day before Gen Con.
Yeah. Trying not to.
And some of that can be from when we get everything ready. Sometimes it's just a technical issue of we tell our system, add all the scenarios to these people's downloads. And it says, great, I will add it to everybody but these 10 people's downloads. And not trying to manually correct anything that had happened. So that's an ongoing thing that we watch for, and that especially our community team takes great pains to address as quickly as possible. So, as always, we're going to try and give GMs as much preparation time as possible and hit any sort of blind spots that may show up in the system. So, we are thinking of you.
Now,
and speaking of thinking of, someone was thinking of you, Tonya. It was Twilight Knight wants to know when you are going to write a PFS scenario.
Not in the foreseeable future.
Oh, why?
I am far stronger as an organizer than I am as a writer. So I've got a lot of initiatives and things on my plate from the org side of the OP, and I want to focus on them. So I've got a lot of writing ahead of me, but it's more procedural documents and new programs and things we want to try and places we want to send Pathfinder that they haven't been before. So one of the ones that's coming across right now is a program to launch in the libraries. So working very closely with our sales team on that one to try and get it up and running in the next few months is the goal, I think.
Now, what is a PFS scenario if not a procedural document with orcs?
Scary?
I'm kidding, of course. There's barely any orcs.
all right.
I wish to Thurston and Hoskins and all of our other excellent writers out there that have wonderful creativity.
Now, Foxworthy257 is asking, are we seeing any changes to the kids track this year?
Yes. You want to go
Sure.
with that one?
Massive changes. And not so. It is being rebranded Pathfinder Society Academy.
Ooh, cool name.
So it's getting its own logo and its own treatment under Pathfinder Society. It's going to stretch from 6 to age of majority. So besides what we always know as kids track, the beginner and the advanced lessons, we're also getting a transitions, which will take the characters from the beginner box, which is where they start, through to being full Pathfinder Society characters and able to play in scenarios. Then we're making tables that are youth-friendly. I don't want to say kid-friendly because that tends to make you think the under 12s, but are youth-friendly so that they can play in a safe environment. The adults that enjoy playing with kids know where to find, they can go out and play with their families. But there are some adults out there that just don't want to be at a table with the younger part of our society. And this will kind of give that delineation as well. Plus, we're going through the catalog and rating all of our scenarios from content that could be potentially not as kid-friendly. And either ways to change it or ways to circumvent it, or these are just scenarios that are probably better not to offer to the younger set.
Okay,
And
so
one of the drives that we've had with Pathfinder Society Academy is to give it more content, because for the past 3-4 years now, it's basically been working off of the same collection of 9 adventures, give or take. And so there have been some of our youngest players who have come in and have played through all of that several years running. And so we decided that it was going to be a priority to make sure that we had some new content for them. So that Transitions that Tonya had mentioned is a collection of 5 new quest-length adventures that helps them to transition over to the full Pathfinder RPG rules. And then there's also the the youth-friendly tables.
Yep.
So there should be no shortage of material for a child to play at Gen Con. So we're really excited about that.
And coming up with once you get out of Academy, the lessons, what are some good scenarios to offer? What's a logical choice to offer? I do have to give a mention to Lucas on this one, because it was some of his brainchild that we've been pulling in, and he's been working on this and getting authors and organizers and liaisoning between everything for it. But one of the other pieces that I don't know where I was going. Oh well, that's just how it is. I know there was a thought. If I have it, we'll come back.
So is
but there's going to be for the Pathfinder Society Academy and the Kids Track general idea is going to have its own prize table this year, isn't it?
Yep. That,
Ooh.
absolutely. More in line with what the kids can use and what they need, because when they see a stack of books that they might not read or might not be interested in using, it's kind of daunting. So we're tailoring the prize table. And I remember what I was going to say. We are trying to package it, and instead of it just being a Gen Con offering, it's going to be offered to the society as a whole for any convention or any
nice.
to use. Which also means, those procedural documents I was saying I had to write, this is some of them, in that it will also help get into schools and into those other youth organizations that can take it and use it as a child.
My area is a very underprivileged area in the U.S., and so a lot of Pathfinder play focused on the youths are happening in our local libraries.
Mm-hmm. Which is why we're putting together the actual library program where the libraries purchase the books. They're going to be there. The librarians are organizing the games. We're working to identify GMs in the area that could come in and run, or supporting youth GMs to pick up their screens and go behind and put it out there. So lots of movement on that side.
Is Yoon going to be a venture captain now then?
Is Yoon going to be a venture captain?
Yeah.
No, we don't actually. We haven't actually incorporated any of the iconic characters directly into the Pathfinder Society storylines, in part because we have them available as pre-generated characters. And if Yoon were to give a faction or a mission briefing, and somebody were playing Yoon at the table, I'm sure there'd be some sort of they brush fingers and suddenly they both explode because of some continuity error. So
time cop rules.
Yeah, we saw the kid role too. So.
What is the timeline we're looking at for the library program and the Pathfinder Academy?
Pathfinder Academy will go live for Gen Con. So everything will be ready to go there and then PDF'd and sent out to our venture captains and down the chain, venture officer-wise. Then the libraries, we're still working on that timeline. But we've got some partners and we've got some people that have already ran in libraries, and I'm trying to tap into that knowledge base. Everything's on hold until I can get the last planning for Gen Con, Origins, PaizoCon, all of those locked and loaded. And then once they're locked and loaded, I can go back to actually putting this one out. But I think the plan was September, October timeframe to run the first library event.
All right, taking a mental note of that. You said that you were going through the past scenarios to give them a rating. Is there any chance you can also rate the length of the scenarios?
That's very feasible. The other thing that we've been talking about is a way to rate how complex they are to run. If you could pick this up and it's a standard format, you've got 2 combats, you've got a skill check, you've got a little bit of this, no major mechanics, no odd monsters, no extra templates, or do you have to have extra time to read extra rules or books that you may not be familiar with? So definitely 2 other ratings that we can look to put on them.
Going back to Claude's question from the Paizo forums, he's saying that of the 3 Season 7 scenarios he's played, there were only 2 combats across all 3 scenarios. So he was wondering if this is a new tactic that Pathfinder Society is, or not a new tactic, but a new trend in Pathfinder Society, that most combats will have a way around them.
From a adventure design perspective, I tend to like having scenarios that have 1 combat that can potentially be bypassed in some non-combat way, whether that involves sneaking or trickery or negotiation or what have you, but still for some sort of option to just punch people in the face and get on with it. One thing I've definitely noticed in the course of outlining the season, that we have several different heist-like adventures, which honestly, heists can go in kind of a no combat direction, or they can go in a there's a lot of combat direction, so it varies a lot. I've heard people tongue-in-cheek refer to Season 7 as Year of the Skill Check, which honestly isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Pathfinder agents are supposed to be skilled individuals. Much as combat is a good thing, it's still good to be able to know about things, or talk to things, or disable things. So that definitely plays in a lot. But I think if there were only 3 combats over the course of 2 scenarios, that might have been in part just luck of the draw. and or how that person's table happened to handle some of those situations. Because there are certainly a few scenarios out there that you can do with only one combat, or potentially, if you really try hard, no combats. But just for the sake of variety, just like I like to have one encounter that can be bypassed, I usually like to have at least one mandatory combat to give everyone a chance to shine in their own way.
There was a real early, I forget the name of it, Season 7 adventure. It might have been Season 6. But I really appreciated it because it was a mandatory combat, but how you... it was the one with the Winter Witches.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was a mandatory combat, but how you proceeded through the adventure determined who that mandatory combat was with. So the ways the players' characters had a lot of real agency on how they went through the adventure, and it felt like, yeah, we do need to make our barbarian happy, but it still makes a difference how they handled it.
Yeah, and
about 3 people in chat have said "From Under Ice."
Yes,
that's the name of the
thank
scenario.
Yes.
Exactly.
So that is. So as we have tried to dial back the length of time that it takes to play through a scenario, we had a push about a year ago to really make sure that we were sticking much more closely to the 4-hour time frame, or at least making sure that 4 hours was a possibility. One of the things that did is it tended to slice an encounter out of some of the highest level adventures, because again, higher level you are, the longer combats tend to take. And that in turn has actually let us have a little bit more word count back to either give more exposition, give more background or description, or in some cases do very significant choices where there might be 3 encounters total that we expect you to do, but it is A, B, and then a choice of either C or D depending upon your option or what choices you make. And we have at least one adventure in the pipeline right now whose expanded outline I absolutely love. The author has done some great things with it. Which allows exactly that type of choice. And so I'm excited to see how that turns out, and I'm excited to see more of those styles of things in the future.
As a GM, I think I would do like a Risk Legacy version of that, where I would have the encounters in sealed envelopes, and we only open one of those sealed envelopes, and it all depends on player direction. I might even leave the envelopes in front of my GM screen.
Temptation.
That could really bring it home to the players that the choice that they're about to make is a serious one.
And then you have to go through the, are you sure? Are you really sure?
You don't double check. Just like, okay, you're one with these people. And then you tear up one of the envelopes in front of them.
Oh, nice.
If they ask, you act as though it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always fun. Or you roleplay whoever the NPCs are that they offended. And you're like, well, I guess I'll never deal with Pathfinder Society again. Tear up the envelope in front of the players. Like, wait, I thought we were trying to be friends with both of them. You were trying. So, yeah, that could be a lot of fun.
Just to let you know, it's we've been going for over an hour and a half now. That's kind of the amount of time that we requested from you. Can we go a little longer?
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to try and go in chronological order from that we got the questions, just to make sure that people aren't waiting too long to get their questions asked.
Okay.
Dire 5, there's a question for John and Tonya. Will there be another PFS LARP like the pre-Black Rose Matrimony style?
Probably not in quite the same format. As far as expertise on the development staff, our LARP experience is fairly low. We definitely relied a lot on volunteer help to pull off that first one, or at least on. Really, I'm speaking kind of secondhand because I participated in the Grand Convocation 2012, but 2013, I guess. Well, either way, but was not a big part in planning it out. But I know that we had several volunteers who really helped out heavily in that preparation. Also, just the type of story that we would want to tell with that, we don't necessarily have a good candidate for it at this time. So we'd really want to see several more pieces fall into place before we explored that sort of opportunity again.
Bard Wannabe wants to know, what is the next boon for GMs at cons?
It is Suli. Comes out next month for last quarter. We've released it to the GMs in some cycles, piece by piece. They had to combine 4 different GM boons to make it, but this time it will come out to in one piece. You just need the 1 boon.
And what made you choose the Suli?
The Suli, in part, well, it's a very reliable PC race. It's one that we've wanted to see a little bit more play with, because so far it's been restricted to either start doing the Ultron of 4 different other GM boons representing an entire year of conventions, or going to Gen Con. And we really want to open it up to people a little bit more broadly than that.
Yeah.
And this will represent a full 9 to 10 months of exclusivity for somebody who might have otherwise been reliant on past seasons' Ultron GM boons to create their own Suli. So hopefully that can assuage some of their exclusivity of having been able to play that earlier than a lot of other people before we've released it to a broader public sphere.
What races? We'll see. What races are going to be legal come Gen Con 2016?
That sounds like a fantastic thing for us to address at PaizoCon.
Ooh.
Do you think do you think we'll see Goran as a playable race? A lot of people want to know what races they can play.
Well, Goran is one of the ones that was printed in Bestiary 5 and was actually increased by a CR, because that and Android and a couple of others are a little bit stronger than might normally be expected, similar to Manavri. And so they might make for an interesting PC race, but if we do, we would do a pretty darn limited release. So perhaps we would look at it for one of the really limited release boons.
Speaking of limited release, we are bringing the charity auction back to Gen Con.
Ooh.
And in the past, it has been some of these limited release race boons. So we're still in planning stages on that one, but it will be coming back.
I know there was some worry that the auctions would lead to people, like, just resentment from people that couldn't get an otherwise really cool option. Is that something were those fears validated at all?
It's a little bit of a balancing act, because there have been some who have been a little bit resentful that they didn't have that opportunity, but we actually got as much concern that the auction did not happen last year, and a lot of people recognize that whether there was a prize or not, opportunity to benefit a really good cause, one of the Gen Con charities, and help them out. And from even a design perspective, those auction boons are a lot of fun to create, and they create some really interesting buzz in the community. So even if it's not something that we release broadly to anybody else for an entire year, because we give sort of I don't know if it's a formal year of exclusivity promise, but there's sort of the understanding that we're not going to really touch it for another year. But if we hear a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, I really wanted a chance at that boon, then we can know that, hey, that's something we should explore as a way to either do as a convention boon or do as a boon unlocked in a scenario or some other method. So it's one of the many testing grounds that we have, and another great way for us to play around with the boon creation system.
Speaking of boons...
I know, I thought it was a thrill to be able to play with the one assassin in Pathfinder Society at PaizoCon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A related question, but not from chat. Is there any race that you're pretty sure will pretty much never be allowable in Pathfinder Society?
I think that it's fair to say that a lot of our evil with a capital E races are either never or virtually not at all going to show up in Pathfinder Society organized play. We had our brief introduction of goblins. I think there were like 30-something of them, but I don't expect us to visit Drow. I don't expect us to bring in hobgoblins. I don't expect us to bring in Duergar. However, that's as a standard Pathfinder Society character, whereas the pre-generated character specials have given us a really exciting window and design space to include some of those characters in as a temporarily playable race pre-generated character and have a lot of fun exploring one of the one of those storylines. I got into a discussion with a guy on the Pathfinder Society Facebook group, I think it was maybe yesterday, about him wanting to see Drow in Pathfinder Society organized play. And I let him know that, probably not, but, maybe we would do like a pre-gen special where a team of Drow and Dwergar have to infiltrate Alkenstar and steal all their guns, and then guns blazing make a fighting escape out back into the Darklands, which the more we talked about it, the cooler it sounded, honestly. We'll see.
But speaking of pre-generated and kind of touching on a couple of things that just came through chat, free RPG Day this year is back to Goblins. It's the RPG side is We Before Goblins.
Woohoo!
So come visit Mog Merch, Chuffy, and Rita before they were the heroes that they are now.
And that one's written by Crystal Fraser. Also, we are going to be getting, we should be getting the pre-generated characters available online before the event, so that way GMs can print them out. We're also getting the Chronicle Sheets and Sanctioning document done a little early this time, because we've been in discussions with several of our translators to see about getting that translated in time for Free RPG Day. So I don't have a list of the range of languages that we're doing, but we should be seeing that in several other translations.
Yep. And then the ACG has a promo card. It is Tup the Terrible, for any of you that have seen the Pathfinder 100. Out of the back, he's coming out with his animal companion friend mount.
Tup the Terrible is a bard sorcerer who has a fascination with puppets, as well as, I think, a sheep named Deliverance.
Yep.
So you'll be seeing all of that as part of the adventure card game offering for Free RPG Day.
And if you go to their website, there's a retail locator that you can find who's running stuff in your area this June.
We've gotten a lot of feedback from people, especially when Free RPG Day approaches, saying, I can't find any place that's running it around me. Based on our look at the website, it looks like there's still time to register a retailer. So if you go on and you look for your retail locations nearby and you don't see them, now is the time to talk to them and say that you're interested in that event. And ideally, interested in helping run the event and the Pathfinder Society offerings there.
Yeah.
Right.
That'll be taking
Bernard
place on
Wolf
June
says,
18th.
what are those fancy spell books behind you? Bernard Wolf wants to know about the fancy spell books.
Those are the Amazing Stories books. Those, the ones off to this side. The green ones. Those are the Amazing Stories publications. It's a series of, if I recall correctly, sci-fi related stories that date back to like the early 19-teens, to which Paizo happens to, I think, own the publication rights. So either way, we have a complete collection of them, and they are absolutely fascinating. Over to my right, we have a lot of the Pathfinder books, as well as a lot of the Pathfinder tales, a setup of some of the miniatures that we set up when we did a little bit of redesigning for when we did some Twitch streaming about a month ago.
We appropriated the conference room. Make life easier.
There's actually a lot more happening with the ACG over the course of the next several months. Right now we're in the middle of the Season of the Rune Lords, which uses the Rise of the Rune Lords box for organized play. So this is also being highlighted with several special events that we're doing at PaizoCon and Gen Con both. We're covering a little bit of stuff for Tanis because she's not here with us right now.
Yep.
But we have a We Be Goblins adaptation over the course of 3 different card game scenarios taking place at PaizoCon. It's a ticketed event. There are going to be 2 tables with 4 players each. So again, if you want to do that, make sure that you sign up when you're getting your PaizoCon schedule, and you can put that as one of your top priorities. There will be a special reward. There are also custom cards that are being designed, and the adventure is being designed in large part by one of our freelancers, Tyler Beck. And Tanis will be co-running that with one of our other volunteers. I believe that's Therian Stormrune from our website.
David.
We're also going to be running a test run, a playtest of the ACG Open. So the adventure card game Open is something that we tried out last year, and it was basically a competitive between tables, how well do you play through the scenario adventure that Tanis really spearheaded and had a lot of fun with and had a lot of good feedback from last Gen Con. So she is doing another version of that. She's playtesting it 2 tables, 2 different slots, so I think that's going to be 4 tables total at PaizoCon. So if you want to get in on that ahead of time and not play it at Gen Con because you will have already seen how it works, but give us some really valuable feedback, then you can do that as well. That's another ticketed event.
Yep, both lottery.
Okay, now.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Actually, if you have something to say, it might be a good time to say it right now. I got a more serious transition to make here in a second.
Okay.
One of the things that we've heard some feedback for is there's Boons for the RPG. What do I get if I'm an ACGer?
Oh, yeah.
And sat down and put heads together, did a lot of brainstorming, and came up with, we're going to call them rewards because we don't want to confuse people with more Boons. And they are based around the season that's coming out. So the ones that we're writing right now are Season of the Rune Lords around Thessalonian magic. They're just about done and ready to go up for layout and art and then out to the people, but it will be along the lines of some rewards to your characters with maybe a few drawbacks if you use them, but applicable to any organized play character in the card guild.
Mm-hmm.
We're also exploring, again, my GM has a star, that's really awesome for RPG, but what do I get if I put together tables of the ACG? We're looking at how to say thank you to the contributors and the coordinators, because it's not the same as a GM sitting down and prepping and running through the adventure, because you can play it as well, but it still takes time, and you're sorting cards, and you need to be up on the rules. So we'd like to say thank you to them and looking at a process of doing that. So those are both things on the horizon. One's a little quicker on the horizon than the other one, but we're working on both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk products for a minute?
I think we're probably good on that front, although it's worth noting that Adventure 2 for Season of the Rune Lords is just coming out, which, unlike the core storyline of Rise of the Rune Lords, takes us into Hollow Mountain during this adventure, which is being featured in the Hollow Mountain comics right now. Tess has been having a lot of fun designing these because she's been able to pull a lot of the comic book art. So I definitely recommend people taking a look at some of those adventures because they have some really nice artwork that looks different from some of our other publications, but is really splashy and cool in its own right, because comic book art is comic book coolness. So that's a lot of fun.
But it's worth noting that it doesn't mirror the comic book, so if you think you know the story, you don't. She's put some twists and some turns in there as well. So they're roughly coordinating with the comic book edition episode coming out, but they're not identical.
I think that covers us pretty well for the ACG.
Yep. Goblin Fight and Goblin's Burn, that was the last one. We've got 2 new decks coming out at Gen Con that are getting some interest because they're going to have Goblin's Fight, Treffy and Rita, and Ack. We learned today from comic book? Comic book Ack. Goblin's Burn is Poog and Mogmerch and a brand new Goblin specially written for it. So.
And his name is Ack?
Yes.
The new Goblin Zambini, but the Goblin, the last martial Goblin, is Ack.
Ack in the Goblin comics series is he is bullied a lot, and so he basically turns against his tribe and becomes the king of his tribe of dead goblins. And to just answer a quick question that I see in the live stream, not Ranzak and not Eki. Those guys already have cards. Instead, we're going to be seeing new goblins.
I think Eck might have actually been one of our predictions now that you describe him. I didn't remember him by name, but when we were speculating, because when the decks were announced, it was really implied that we would know these goblins. So Param and I really racked our brains for all the goblins we knew, and that was one of the ones on the list.
Yep.
Well,
But yeah, because Renzek and Eki were promo cards, we're working to make them compatible with the Goblin decks, but they will not be part of it.
A bit of a change of pace here, and a little bit more of a serious question that has come up from a few different sources, including from our blog, so I'm paraphrasing here. But with the current state of harassment issues that are becoming more and more common at geek conventions and in the geek community, how should a PFS or GM organizer handle potential issues such as that comes up during an event?
That is where we lean to our venture officers. They are all asked to be inclusive. Pathfinder Society is very much inclusive. Paizo stands behind that. We want everyone to play. We want everyone to have fun. Unfortunately, issues arise. If they do arise, we ask that you tell the organizer or the venture officer that's present. If they can resolve it, they will. If they can't, they will up-channel it through their regional venture coordinators and all the way to me. If for some reason it would be someone in that chain that would be part of the issue, I would hope not, but I will never say never on anything. My door is always open. And I've gotten a few of these. I've responded to them. We've dealt with them. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We want to make sure first that the person feels supported and that the situation doesn't escalate. And then from there, we want to give them what they need, what support they need, what support the venture officers need to figure out what's going on, and work with it there. Of course, we can't deal with criminal activity. That's just out of our purview, but we can make sure that things aren't happening in our spaces. And this is something I take extremely seriously, just being me, and who I am, and, yeah.
Well, definitely thank you for that. We definitely, yeah. So kick it up the chain through the venture officers and kick it up high until they can get resolved officially. Gotcha.
Yep. And if it kicks to me, it kicks to me, and we'll go right through it. Not a problem.
Ryan?
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I should have a follow-up question, but that really covered it really efficiently.
Ferrochemist, the answer to that is kick it up to me, because eventually I am at the top. So.
Okay, so for people that are listening, Ferrochemist's question was, what if there's a current regional coordinator, or I guess somebody in the line, that's the way you described it, then you'll be the one that deals with it. And it's good to know that there's somebody at the top who takes this very seriously. We can hear it in the tone of your voice. And any question or any complaints or any situations like this, I'm sure it sounds like it'll get your full attention.
Yep. I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I've got my email. It's very rare that I don't check one of them on a regular basis. Pry my phone out of my hand type issue. So find me, let me know, and we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I say I'm speaking, but this is a team consensus. And if for some reason you would not feel comfortable talking to me, John, Linda, any of them, Tanis, we all agree on this issue very strongly.
Right.
And we'll work on it.
And from my experience, Paizo has always been rather unified on this particular point of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyone that has Paizo staff friends on Facebook knows that a lot of the articles that you referenced earlier, Para, they've been sharing them. They've been making sure that people stay educated and people stay on top of the relevant arguments in these situations, that they don't get bogged down by a lot of the rhetoric that can come along with it and opposed to it.
We're actually addressing this in our PaizoCon seminars. We've got the diversity in gaming, which we've had several years, and we're also talking about creating safe spaces in gaming. Okay. So that's one that the esteemed F. Wesley Schneider, myself, and a few other people will be working on as well to put out.
Well, those will definitely be ones we'll want to make sure get recorded. And for the previous discussions on diversity, any of our listeners interested in that, we've recorded every one you've ever done, and they're all available to listen to on our network.
Yep.
Switching gears and trying to finish off the last of the questions. So if there's any more questions coming in, I've already got quite a long list here, so I don't think we'll be able to get to everything, but I can't quite read the name. He wants to know how Core is going for Society.
Core has mixed reviews. Where it has taken off either because people needed replay options or because it's universities and places where introducing a smaller selection of books has been working better. It's growing massively. But it has not really taken root in the society as a whole. One of the things we just talked about this week was, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? How could we make this a focus again? Let's pick up the initiative and run with it. So more discussions. That's kind of the first step, is a lot of brainstorming and a lot of thought on, does it need a rebranding? Does it need a new initiative push? Does it need more questions answered? When we were talking about the libraries program, we don't want to limit it to core, but core is the logical starting point of putting our game into any new place.
And along the same lines, any chance of some core alternative options for GM Boons?
Boon Maker?
You mean different GM Boons that would apply in core?
Yeah, I guess if you're a GM running core, is there an issue using the boons you get? Because you're going to get boons that give you options outside of core.
Yeah, and I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, unless there is a boon granted to you within, like to open up a race, except within a boon you earn in a scenario, then I don't think you use it. So I think those are for standard only. So we have one adventure that opens up a new race that I've specifically ruled on does apply in core, but that's an interesting point. I have not given that much thought, admittedly, but that's something for each person.
There we go. And this is how we get new ideas and more things to discuss. Yay! It also, just opening something up that might not be available now, that would be neat to limited use in core.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep. So,
Well,
to our players that have a better brain sense than us. Thank you. Okay.
Ultimate Intrigue just came out.
Yes.
And this is Intriguing April here at No Direction Podcast Network. So I'd like to finish off the interview by talking about how Ultimate Intrigue is going to be incorporated into Pathfinder Society, starting with the social combat and a lot of the new rules. You mentioned, John, earlier that there will be a very social-heavy scenario coming out towards the end of this season. Is that going to use social combat, or is that going to use something that's just an existing system?
That is going to use an existing system, namely, if you're familiar with Thurston Hillman's other work, you probably know that he pioneered the influence system in Blackhurst Matrimony, and so we're going to see something similar to that, but it does match up with the Ultimate Intrigue take on the influence system. Oof, stumbled over some things there, but so it's going to use that. As for social combat itself, so far there are not set-in-stone plans for using social combat. However, in the additional resource sanctioning, we left in almost all of the verbal duels, social combat style modifications, because the more that we read over those and think about how to incorporate those, the more likely it is that we might incorporate those as a center point or as a centerpiece for one of our scenarios, similar to how we've done that with actually the research system, and we've done it several times with the influence system now. So only a matter of time before we have verbal duels.
Right, and it's Ultimate Intrigue seems like it applies very much to a lot of what Pathfinder Society does, so I'm definitely excited to see how it might be used. Is there any more specific things from Ultimate Intrigue that we can look forward to in any upcoming scenarios?
Well, there's always the question of how we're going to see our first vigilante on the other side of the GM screen. Certainly the additional resources for Ultimate Intrigue has already gone live, so if you want to know what is legal for your player character from that book, you can check up on that document. I will note that somebody has pointed out that the Kineticist Wild Talents didn't show up on the additional resources. Yes, those should be legal. That's just a misstep on my part. Otherwise, so the Ultimate Intrigue book has new magic items, it has new feats, it has some new ways of looking at some of the classic spells, especially divination spells, and how to incorporate them into mysteries and the like. And so we might find ourselves, as we approach that style of scenario, referencing back to Ultimate Intrigue or Ultimate Intrigue on the Pathfinder PRD, to incorporate some of that guidance and help to shape some of our adventures.
When people register their vigilante characters, which identity should they be registering the character under?
Whichever one they really want to register under. It does not send up a flag in our system saying this looks like a masked man. It just, if you want to be Batman, that's fine. If you want to show up as Bruce Wayne, that's fine. Except I'll probably roll my eyes at you being Bruce Wayne and/or Batman if you.
That's a very middle of the road answer. I can't make a Civil War reference with you being in the middle of the road, John. I had my joke lined up, John, and you ruined it.
I'm clearly against them both. Mm-hmm. That's the only answer.
What does that make you?
Spider-Man?
Fine, you're Spider-Man, John. You're Spider-Man.
It could be a lot worse.
All right.
Param, Ultimate Intrigue related questions.
I asked them already.
All right.
It's good.
Then I think we're pretty much ready to wrap things up. Is there anything that you guys want to bring attention to? Somebody's just made an Underoos reference in chat. So there you go, John. You're Underoos.
I love Underoos. Those are awesome.
Is there something you'd like to bring people's attention to, either Pathfinder Society related, other things that you think people should be paying attention to? Starting with Tanya.
You had noted on the in your spoiler text that we were going to talk about some GAMA stuff. The two pieces that came out of there were that the pocket paperback is coming out for the core rulebook and the bestiary. A little much cheaper, so easier for people to get in on that one. The second one is that Curse of the Crimson Throne is being put together as a hardback, similar to the way Rise of the Runelords was. We will answer that yes, it will be sanctioned.
Yes.
So
excellent.
That is my best I can end with.
I think
we also have another product that's coming out in July, which means it'll be just before Gen Con, which are the Pathfinder Society pawns. So Linda and I got approached and basically told her, hey, why don't you come up with a list of a full set of pawns that we could then print and would really help people or GMs run Pathfinder Society events. And we realized that we have so much custom art of some of our villains, of NPCs, of people who show up again and again, that we could make that happen. And on top of that, we could fill in a couple of blanks with some of the creatures that appear most often in our adventures. Like, we have ghouls again and again. Why not include a couple in the Pathfinder pawns? Or skeletons, or shadows. Oh, geez, we do shadows. Or just even a couple of goblins, or some of the NPCs, or even player characters that people have been wanting to have representation of, but haven't had them. So the full cast of the kobolds from True Dragons of Absalom, the full cast of Aspis Consortium agents from Serpent's Rise.
Nice.
Ooh.
We also have, for some of our always available races and underrepresented Boon races, we now have at least one representative of a lot of those. So if you needed a YN character, a Tengu, a Nagaji, if you needed an Undine, if you needed a Sylph, we are putting in some of those. So that way, you as a player character can also have some use out of this as you figure out what you want to build next in Pathfinder Society. And even some of the hugest minis that show up again and again, like Lightning Elementals, on which I have a very soft moratorium as far as them showing up. Sort of like how Season 2 and 3 were like, oh, and actually 4, were like, let's do chases. And Season 3 was like, let's use haunts. And by the end, people were kind of tired of them for a while. I'm tired of Lightning Elementals. Those can go away for a while. But we do have one for all of those other scenarios that we've published that call for a Lightning Elemental.
There is an Audiac. Unfortunately, it is not wearing any hats.
But you are totally at liberty to take a Sharpie or a pen and draw your own hats and create your own rendition of the beloved Oatlug.
I will.
Or heck, you can paint him with highlighters or acrylic. That's all okay.
I will point out that you can get the pawns in PDF format, and that means it's just a Photoshop job away of having a custom hatted Ayag. But I did want to point out that you guys sort of already did a society one unofficially. The Inner-Sea Pawn Box we have deemed the unofficial society pawn box because of the crazy amount of society characters that were in here.
Yeah. So but between that one and this one, you've got everything you need. You can run
I
stuff.
still don't have that one. I got to pick that up.
Ryan!
I'm behind on my pawns. I'm sorry.
Like my pawn subscription is like one of my favorite subscriptions. It's like I never need a mini again.
Yeah. But no, one of the things looking through was that there was large elementals, medium elementals, small elementals, but no huge elementals.
Or not nearly enough
Yeah.
of them. And if we wanted to make the NPC, the Pathfinder Society pawn box, or pawn collection, as much of a go-to one-stop shop for Pathfinder Society gyms as possible. It won't cover absolutely all of your needs, but as far as the things that show up a lot, as well as the things that have cool custom art that you want to make sure that your players go, oh, what the heck is that? Its label is only a name. We don't even know if it's a ghoul or not. And you can be like, you're right, you don't know if it's a ghoul or not. Should have put ranks in the skills. It's something special to throw out in front of them.
But still no gargantuan or colossal miniatures.
No, the pawns are based on certain combinations of jigs, so we only have certain formats that we can work with.
Yep. The dies are not made yet to do that. Now, we have heard quite a bit, oh, we can't do that, and then several years later we get to the point of, oh, we should do this. So maybe at some point we will definitely take the T-Rex and the other ideas that have come through and add them to the back burner of not now, but maybe. So.
Renard Wolf has a very good point. What about dead Pathfinders? Pawns of dead Pathfinders.
You're gonna need these.
They're in just about every other scenario.
Pathfinders. I recommend using an X-Acto knife, and that way you can take whatever your favorite pawn is and just deface it enough and tip it on over. Yes,
Right,
we
I think
need a colossal centipede. And flesh-eating oozes.
I was going to get to that, but if there's not going to be any colossals, then
Not at this
somebody else is mentioning colossal centipedes now. Just use a real centipede, he says.
On your adventure without a colossal centipede.
I've made my own custom colossal centipede miniature.
I do want to.
Surprised face.
I do want to draw attention to one of your minor product lines that doesn't get mentioned hardly as often, because they mentioned they want the dinosaur pawn box. The one things that Paizo also has, and I think it's a partnered product, is you still have your paper minis, which are the print them yourself versions, and those do fill a lot of the gaps that unfortunately the pawns can't fill due to size restrictions, or no way on earth would that particular miniature ever be profitable.
Exactly. Yeah, because when it comes down to the plastic minis, it's what WizKids and Eric and the team work out together too. So, however, the Rusty Dragon was extremely popular, and I have heard that we are looking at that again.
Glad that that was successful.
And set dressing went over extremely well.
All right.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. And where can people find you on social media? How can they get in touch with you if they need to?
PFS OPC, Twitter, Facebook.
And I primarily work through the Paizo.com/Pathfinder Society site. So if you need my attention, you'll usually get it there.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot for
Thank
joining
you
us,
all.
guys. This was another great interview. And we'll be right back to wrap things up right after this.
Bye, guys.
Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shoutouts.
Okay.
And we're back.
Thank you for joining us for episode 129 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, we just want to bring your attention to some cool things that are happening. Just some cool things that we think would be of interest to Pathfinder Society enthusiasts. Starting with the announcement, we mentioned it earlier in the episode. This is an intriguing April. We've both been very excited about Ultimate Intrigue, as have Alex and Anthony, our the hosts of our sister podcast, the Private Sanctuary podcast, and of course the writers of the blogs on the NoDirectionPodcast.com website. So we are going to be dedicating a lot of attention to Ultimate Intrigue, including a special episode next week where all four of us are going to be reviewing the book. And then 2 weeks after that, we hope to have a Paizo staffer. This hasn't been finalized yet, but hopefully somebody from the design team to come on and tell us some of the trivia, some of the ins and outs of Ultimate Intrigue and its development. So also joining us next week will be some people from Legendary Games. They are also releasing a lot of Intrigue tie-in products, and so we're going to be talking to them about that before we get to the interview. Before we get to the big Ultimate Intrigue review. I also came across a really cool Kickstarter. It's different from anything I've ever brought attention to, and I always hesitate to pimp. Somebody says my monitor is drunk, and I see what he's saying now. I guess it was just not worth doing all the alignment for what's going to be 2 seconds, Pam.
I did.
Okay, alignment. Cool. So this Kickstarter is called Dice Rendezvous with Randomness, and it is a coffee table art book that shows pictures of dice being submerged in water, or there's the globe just being laid out by very colorful dice. These are beautiful pictures, and it's kind of a fascinating Kickstarter. You can either get the full art book, or you can pick and choose some of your favorite prints. I'm going to post the link in chat now. I recommend people check it out. I'm not familiar with this artist, and in fact, I'm not even too sure how to pronounce his name. He is, I believe he's Finnish. He's definitely from the EU, and I'm just not familiar enough with how to pronounce his name. But from his work, that is what speaks for itself. It is some very cool, very different artwork, and it doesn't have anything to do with gaming, other than that this is a cool tool in a different context that we are seeing something that we all use in every game.
Excellent. One thing I want to shout out to is that, this isn't so much as a shout out, but a random thing. I have talked at length about some of the recent 3D printing stuff that's been happening in the games industry, such as Fat Dragon Games. There's the Open Dungeon Project, which is like an open source terrain that you can download for free and print on 3D printers. There's lots of 3D miniatures and stuff. And so I wanted to get into this, so I got one. I got a brand new 3D printer. I'm going to be toying around with it and seeing what can be done with it. I've been practicing 3D modeling and stuff. I'm going to see how much this can help change a game table and sort of be... So you can expect me to be talking a ton about that as the next episodes go along, because I have a new toy to make new things, and I like to make crazy things for games. Also, probably a lot of Create Wondrous Object articles.
Cool. I was going to ask if you were going to do any articles about them.
Maybe.
I am very intrigued by this. I know that you were dabbling in 3D art a while ago. I saw your fish. I liked your fish.
Did you see my Hobbit head?
No, when was that?
Oh, I guess it's been a little while ago. But yeah, I did a Hobbit head.
Cool. So I won't ask you specs about your 3D printer, because you do want to talk about this in a future episode. Right. So I will save all of my questions, but maybe I'll try and remember to write them down, because I have so many right now.
I haven't even got it out of the box yet. It's still fresh delivery. It came right before my vacation, so it was a pretty bad timing. But when I get my recording set up, moved back to the game room now that winter is over and the White Walkers are no longer between me and getting regularly to my PC, I'll have the room to set up all the good crafty stuff over there. And I'm really eager. I had to buy whole new sets of paints and stuff for it, and it's going to be nice.
Awesome. Finally, in 51 days, which this was confirmed by No Direction's PaizoCon correspondent Darren Caldemeyer. 51 days, PaizoCon. You already heard about some of the really exciting things that are going to be happening at PaizoCon related to Pathfinder Society. So May 27th to 30th, that is a Friday to a Monday, is a 4-day convention held in Seattle, Washington at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotels. And I know, Param, you've yet to go there, and I feel a little bad saying this every time, but if you are a Pathfinder fan, you will love PaizoCon. You really need to check it out at least once. I'm talking to you, Param. I'm talking to all of our fans. It is a real experience to just get that concentrated energy that everyone is speaking the same language, everyone is speaking the same shorthand, because we all come to the same hobby. But also at this point, Paizo and Pathfinder are such huge entities that you could also experience other sides of the game from somebody who is super passionate about that side of the game. Like, the only time that I really get to talk to adventure card guild players is when I'm at PaizoCon, and it's fun feeling that energy, that same interest in Pathfinder, but from a different version of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for our listeners, my plan actually in January was to skip Gen Con this year and instead do PaizoCon, but when I tried to get those days off, they conflicted with work, and I could not get those days off.
I know, and I feel bad, Param.
Well, no worries.
Because PaizoCon is fun, and I will be there. We will be making a call out to volunteers next episode, so I'm telling you now to prepare for it. I just need to make sure that I've got some documents lined up, so that when the volunteers do start coming in, I'm better able to keep track of them. Yep. I also want to see just how many recorders I can get this year, because I've yet to have a perfect PaizoCon where we record everything, and I'm hoping to change that.
Yep. Also, we will be making calls for Gen Con volunteers. We do need those, maybe even more desperately, because... Well, maybe not more desperately, but we do need them exceptionally desperately, because Ryan is not going to be able to do a lot of help on that front due to his work. Gen Con for him is a day job now.
Yep.
Which I get to taunt him with all the cool stuff that's going on. Every now and then I walk by his table and go, "Oh man, Ryan, they just announced this really cool thing that you didn't get to see." But besides that little bit of schadenfreude, I need every inch of help I can get to help make this possible, because otherwise we might not be able to cover Gen Con to the extent that it deserves to be covered.
So, until next time, I'm Rex. Oh, and remember, next time is next week. We're not doing the usual 2-week gap between episodes. So, until next week, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.
Bye, guys.